Hello, and welcome to today's Saturday Sit Down. I am going to reflect on a conversation from this Thursday that just aired with my girlfriend, Jerri Newsom. Jerri and I covered a lot of ground. And one of the things I want to talk about is depression and suicide. These are real things. They are not something to be taken lightly, they are to be taken seriously. And if you are feeling suicidal or you are feeling depressed, please contact a suicide hotline in your country. Please look up the number. If you know someone that is battling with depression or feels suicidal, reach out on their behalf and be their advocate. I don't want you to say you wish you would have or thought you did something. If you feel like that's a concern, act on it and don't let it just go by. So I say that because in this conversation, Jerri does speak about her sister that did commit suicide and battled with depression. And I want you to be serious about it. So let me go into the things. Yes, I am still on a sheet of paper. And speaking of sheets of paper, we now have like a Widowhood Real Talk with Tina card that has a QR code on it. One of the board members made it, and we'll be able to pass that out. And if you want, we can email that to you in your social media if it's something that you want to share. You can email us at widowhoodrealtalk@gmail.com, or you can go to our website and put in a request for the QR code if you wanted to. And that is widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org. Um, as I said, yes, I'm still on a sheet of paper, and I want to talk about the things on my list. One, yes, I have sparkly gym shoes. Those are like my podcast gym shoes, and they make me feel kind of fun. Rose gold is the color. On the very first interview that Jerri had with me, she had her sparkly gym shoes, which inspired me to get my own. So every time I'm podcasting, I am wearing those gym shoes. Friendships. Wow. The friendships that I have with the people that you're hearing from in my hood, I don't even think about how long that we've been friends and the different evolutions of our friendships and how they have just become so valuable in time. But when I reflect on my life and as we're talking, these ladies, these people in my life are so instrumental to who I am as a person. And so much the reason why the word hood means what it does to me, that those people that are in my community are important. And I say that to for you, the people that are in your hood, the people that have stuck by you, take value in them. Sometimes you may find the people that stayed in place in this process may not be the people you thought that were going to be there, and it wound up being somebody different. But whoever it is that stood there and stayed in place, appreciate them. They're the people that should. So they're the people who showed up. They are the people that stayed the course, and appreciate them for being in your life, because it is difficult walking side by side with somebody that is going through grief. So the people that had the tenacity to do it, appreciate them. For the people that didn't have the ability to do it, don't give them such a hard time. Before we were in our position, we may have not been the best person standing in the gap for someone else. So give them a little bit of grace. Jerri talked about how difficult it is as adults making friends. And it's interesting she would say that because in our conversation that we'll be having with Allison eventually, she talks about the same subject. And making friends is difficult because we have busy lives. We're adults. Being able to put yourself out there and be transparent is difficult. And now, on top of it, you're dealing with grief. That can complicate the idea of making friends even more. I say that because I want you to realize it's not easy. And it's a challenge, then you go, okay, I was expecting it to be a challenge. And if it's a challenge, then you won't be disappointed. It's what's to be expected. Similar to us having these conversations. It's not saying that it won't happen, and trying to normalize the reality of it. Because I think once we realize this is what it looks like, it makes our ability to survive it and go through it a little bit more. So, what am I saying? Making friends is difficult, but don't stop doing it because it is, because you'll have rewards from those friendships. Jerri spoke about the passing of her siblings, her one brother being HIV positive, and her other sister battling with depression. And it resulted in suicide. And my heart goes out to her family, for the heaviness of everything that they have endured. And at the same time, it amazes me about Jerri, because that lady she takes all of the pain, all of the things that she's experienced, and that has become her inspiration to live. She lives a vibrant, technicolor life, because I know she knows how short life is and how much it is to be valued, to be lived. When she listed losing her parents, her siblings, and that's a lot to carry. And now she's looking forward to the generations that are coming after her, her children, her grandchildren, her great grandchildren, that the existence of her family line. And Jerri is baking cookies with her grandkids. She's hanging out with them. She'll go to the restaurant with them. She is living as much as she has grieved. And you know what? I'm going to say she's living more than she has grieved. She is taking that energy and using it to live. And I say that to encourage you. You may be dealing with more than one loss. And then on top of it, her dog. Oh, and it happened twice. That is hard. Those little furry babies become so much to us. And when we are dealing with grief and then they are snatched from us at the same time, it makes dealing with grief that much more difficult. And yet, she has persevered. I encourage you, no matter what it is that you're going through, to persevere. One moment at a time, 1 hour at a time, one day at a time, 1 week at a time. And eventually you'll look back and you'll see that you've made it further than you thought possible. Because when things happen initially, trying to see a month into the future, a week, that's too much. You're just trying to grasp what happened today. So I encourage you that you may have lost a pet, you may have lost multiple family members. Hang in there. Hang in there. Reach out to people that you know. Reach out to a therapist. Reach out to a counselor. Reach to your journal. Maybe you don't like writing. You can do an audible journal in your phone. But let the pain out, because it is hard to keep inside. So I encourage you to deal with that. Lean into the pain. Jerri talked about that. She talked about how easy it is for us to want to run away from the pain that we are experiencing, because it does seem easier. It seems as if I put it in a bottle and I don't deal with it and I just put on a happy face and smile and act like everything is okay. Everything will turn out okay. What I realized from me and what I realized talking to other people, it don't work. You try to stuff that pain deep down inside and act like it's not a reality, it will come oozing out in different places that you have no control of. So, do you need to lean into all the pain at once? Oh gosh, no. But when it comes, little by little, wave by wave, that may be an opportunity to lean into it. One way is maybe a child passed in a location close to your home, and for 7 years you have avoided that spot, and it plagues you and it gives you so much anxiety and it gives you so much stress. But deep down inside, you want to go to that space because you want to honor that loss. Maybe ask someone to go with you. Maybe going there by yourself is not something that you're up to doing. But maybe when you go to that place that seemed like it plagued you so much and it paralyzed you, going there and thinking that this is the place where they breathe their last breath, then that may be a place that you flip and turn into a place of honor, a place where you go to remember their life, where you go to celebrate them. You may go in that spot and read a book and think about them, lay down a blanket if it's in a park, or if it's on the side of the road, you may pull over and you may pray for the safety for other people that travel that way. And in doing that, you take what may have been a struggle and take it into something that has purpose. I encourage you that when pain comes, to not run away from it, but make it in dissectable pieces that you're able to grasp it, that you'll be able to take it in, inhale it, and you'll be able to process it and see what it means for you. I like to share with you something, a way that I leaned into pain. And when I look back at it, I wonder, like, I can't believe I really ever did this. But where Mark passed, we were on a base in Delaware. And when I would travel from Pennsylvania to Virginia before I moved here permanently, I had to pass by the spot, the hotel where we stayed. And the first time I did that, I was a wreck. And then every time I would go back and forth, it would either go, I either had to go that route or go out of my way like by 3 or 4 hours, and I couldn't bring myself to do that. But the emotional roller coaster that I experienced was gut wrenching. And so on the 1 year anniversary of Mark's death, I called, got a reservation, and I stayed in that same room. Yes, I stayed in the same room that my husband died in. I cried. I read the cards that people had given at the funeral. I talked to Mark. I remembered us running up and down the steps. I remember everything that took place that night. And I got up the next day and I closed the door. And when I drove the rest of the way to Virginia, it didn't rip me apart. I leaned into that grief. I leaned into that pain. I leaned into what was plaguing me every time I was driving up and down that road. And I took that back. And I took it and made it about the memories. When I drove that way again, I thought about our love. I thought about our experiences together. And it didn't plague me as much as it did before. It still hurt driving that way. But for me, leaning into it and addressing the pain made it sweet. It may not always happen so easily. Well, that wasn't easily, but I'm saying it may not happen that way for every situation. But I invite you to identify the pain that are gut wrenching for you and consider how you can turn that pain into purpose, an opportunity to honor the loved one that you have instead of letting it attack you all the time. The love that you shared with your missing person is so important and so to be honored. And I want it to be something you honor, that's something that's always causing you pain. I want you to get to a place where you're having a life that you're living and thriving. Will it be the same? No, but it can be good for you. And that's what I want. And as it gets a little different every day, that you know that you're not on this journey alone, that there are other people here experience this complicated thing called grief. One of the other things that Jerri talked about, that okay, it's sometimes okay to be alone. Sometimes you want to be by yourself, to cry, to be emotional, to be a hot mess, and not to answer to anybody. And that's okay. But the other thing that Jerri talked about is sometimes it's important and necessary to be drawn out of the house, to be drawn into activities with other people, and to be able to be okay to have joy. You get to be able to have joy. You don't have to feel some kind of way because you're happy. You could be happy 1 minute and then the next hour be full on grieving that person. Being happy right now doesn't mean that you don't still miss your loved one. Being happy right now doesn't mean that you don't love them. Being happy right now is part of you living. And I want you to learn how to give you permission to say it's okay to be happy. I can laugh. I can have joy. And those emotions do not mean that I don't miss my loved one. It does not. It doesn't disqualify your love for them because you're happy. It doesn't make your experience with them less because you're feeling joy. Don't let those strange lies that people say taint your feelings to be able to live. You love them. You still do. That's why you're on this conversation. That's why you're part of the widowhood, because you are trying to learn how to manage your grief and still live. And it's okay. One of the other things that Jerri and I talked about is that every grief does not get managed the same. When Jerri's mother died, I knew it was important for me to be there instantly. And I was at her home, and we were all taking our rotations and being there and being by her side. When her sister passed, I had a sense that there was something different going on with that she needed different space with different people. And I waited when that time was right for me to scoop in and be an integral part, whether it was every phone call, still now, texts and different things like that. But as you know, the person that you are supporting, or if it's you yourself that are dealing with multiple griefs, and you're trying to understand, why do I feel this way versus the way I felt when the other time the person passed? Because sometimes it can be deaths layered on top of each other. It can be where you're at. Jerri was dealing with her sister's passing. She was dealing with her birthday, Christmas, and retiring. She had all these emotionals up and down and trying to package and put those all together in her mind. It was a lot. It was a lot. I wanted to hold her along each one of those. And when we were at her retirement ceremony, she was happy for it, but I know at the same time she was glad for it to be over and she could just kind of exhale because so much had happened in a short period of time. I share that because you may be dealing with the death of your husband, and then you may have a child that's about to give birth to your first grandbaby, and you are struggling with how to deal with that situation when you're missing your spouse of 10, 20, 30, 40 years and then celebrating the new life of this grandchild. You may be losing a sister or a brother, and a cousin may be getting ready to get married, and you were planning to go to that wedding. And you're struggling with how to deal with those emotions, knowing that all your siblings will be there, but the one that is missing. Life keeps lifing. And we don't often get an opportunity to separate everything that's going on. And I want you to know, with your grief, that is a reality. Sometimes you'll get to show up in situations where people are excited. Sometimes you'll have to take a knee. But it's okay, because that's what grief looks like. It is not always easy and nice cut. It is complicated and it is messy. And that's why I say give yourself a minute at a time, an hour at a time, a day at a time, because different things will show up. And as you're writing down in your journal, as you're connecting with other friends and talking, the idea of dealing with this, the whole weight is not on you. You're giving your hood, your community, the opportunity to step in and help you. Dreaming about loved ones. And that's the point where Jerri reached out to me and started journaling again, because when she woke up, she wanted to remember everything about the dream. And I mentioned to her, if you write it down, it could help you remember a lot of the details. And that was so helpful for her. I talk to many people and they share about the dreams of loved ones, things that they have been told, and it seems to be so comforting and so helpful. Catherine, my daughter, has had a lot of dreams about her dad, and I think Alexander has experienced one or two. I've only had two myself. And both of those dreams, one, I was in a convenience store, and Mark walked up to me, and he just looked at me, didn't say a word. And I said, I thought I was supposed to go into the store. Why are you in here? And he just looked at me again, and he was walking out the door. And I said, can I go with you? And he just stopped me. I couldn't go with him. And I was like, why can't I go? And he still didn't say a word. And he walked out the door, and I was like in the store by myself. And I figured he was telling me to let it go, to not follow him, and that was so hard. Maybe I had three, because I think I had a dream of him being in the house that I'm in now in Virginia, and him walking around and not seeing that there was a place for him in this house, but yet he was happy for me. He didn't say anything, but I remember him walking around the house in different rooms and going, "Oh, I see what you did here," look, pointing at different stuff and looking. I could see him taking it in, and just, I had a sense of contentment. And then he was gone. And I've never had a dream of him again. For me, I took that to mean that he saw that I was in a place that he was never at with me, and he was happy for me. I have purchased some books on dreams because I'm interested in knowing and understanding, but that's how it worked for me. You may have dreams of your loved ones. I encourage you to write them down, to understand, to seek insight, and to just give purpose to those things, and connect with people that have understanding of that. I don't, but I do hear oftentimes of people speaking about dreams. When Catherine has a dream about her dad, I encourage her to share it with me, because I want her to know that her dad's life is worth celebrating, and she doesn't have to hold that inside. The other part of the conversation with Jerri moved into, not so, moving away from her personal grief, and then moving into the conversation about when Mark passed. And I have some really good friends. I have really good friends. And as I was re listening to our conversation, I know that my friends have taken, or they took, so much of that weight of what I was dealing with, and it made it easier for me to endure. Oh, I still have to endure and have endured Mark's death, but I am so grateful that when I gave them permission and I opened and expressed my needs, that they leaned in and they showed up. And I understand that some of you may not have friends, or you may have friends that are not as faithful, that you are doing a lot of this work solo. And you are exactly why I'm doing this podcast. Because whether you're doing it with a tribe of people or you're doing it independently, there are moments in this process where you feel like you're alone. No one understands how you feel. This is all a bunch of malarkey. You don't want to do it anymore. And I want you to know, hang in there. You are not alone. I am here with you, and every one of my people on this podcast understand a concept of what you're going through. And we want you to hang in there and just give it a moment. And when you get overwhelmed, then breathe. Take a moment and exhale, because you can get through it. My friends, the reality of one of the things that we talked about with Jerri is the reality that it really happened. Jerri had been there the night Mark passed. She had been there for the service, but not until she was back at his apartment in Virginia packing up that it felt like he was no longer really here. You'll each have your own moments when the reality of that person is not here. It may be a phone call that you try to make to someone out of a natural reaction and realizing they will not answer that phone. That is a little difficult to deal with. And you just got to take it in. Now, one of the things that I thought was so interesting, when Jerri told me she had taken 2 of Mark's shirts and she wears them periodically, I was blown away when she told me that. The first time she told me that, I was like, oh, it is as hard for you as it has been to me. But she would have never told me that if I didn't ask her to share. If I didn't ask her what did Mark's death mean to her, she would have been so concerned about my feelings, she would have never shared with me how Mark's death impacted her. And I encourage you to reach out to people that were close to your loved one and ask them, how has their death impacted them? Being able to hear those words, being able to have other people express their feelings and their emotions can be so encouraging to you. And it also relieves them and gives them opportunity to share. And they know that they have your permission, that when they talk about their grief of your loved one, they're not stealing something from you, but they're allowing them to be on that journey with you. And that is key. Now, I hope you heard that conversation about the deer meat. The sister girl from Chicago had never had deer meat. Now she meets the white man from Pennsylvania and he talking about venison. And I'm like, ain't that Bambi though? We eat that? It was good. It was really good. They made jerky out of it. I'm sorry if you're not a vegetarian, this conversation is not for you. But the venison is healthier, tastier than red meat to me. I do like them both, but if to have a butcher that processes it correctly and does it well, extremely tasty. So I encourage you, get outside your comfort zone if you've never had venison, and if you try it, let me know how it tastes and tell me what is your favorite venison recipe. Now, back to those friends of mine. They asked me what could they do, and I said, well, anything? And they said yes. And I was like, okay, well, can you get the house ready for me to come? To hear Jerri talk about how all those ladies were in the house going up and down the steps and all the joy and love that they put in the house before I got there, oh, that made me feel so good. My sister Yolanka spearheaded it all, and they were all in there. When I came, I remember arriving from I left Pennsylvania, stopped at my girlfriend's house in Maryland, and then drove the next day to Virginia. And I got home to my new house, and a couple of them, my sister, I went to meet her at work and picked up the keys for my house. A couple of ladies met me there. We took some pictures, and I got in that house. I drew myself a bath, got a glass of white wine, and I took that bath and cried. And I said, we're here, Mark, because I still have his ashes. They came with me. I carried them with me. They were downstairs, but I was in that tub and I was like, I left the house in Pennsylvania and I am here. It is hard and I miss you immensely, but I am still living. I am still doing this. And I think I did drink more than one glass of wine that night. But it was so good for what they did for me that I could just walk into the house and be able to just have a bed to sleep in and to be able to relax. I encourage you to share with us what was your story of moving from a place maybe where you live with your loved one. What was your experience like? I want to hear how your journey went. Another thing that Jerri talked about is let it happen and not to hold it in. So I'm going to say it like this. Don't judge me. You know when you got gas and you're trying to hold in the passing of gas and how much pressure that creates, and you're trying to find someplace safe to release the gas and nobody else will hear it happening? You're running around someplace safe, looking to your left, looking to your right, because the pressure is building up from that gas. That's what grief is like when we're trying to hold it in. It hurts so much. We're looking to the left, we're looking to the right, because we're concerned about somebody seeing us crying. We're concerned about somebody seeing us have an emotional breakdown, and we're trying to stop it up. We're trying to act like, I know how to deal with this. No one needs to see me breaking down. If they see that, then they may think I'm weak. If they see that, they won't think that I'm learning how to live. They may want to learn how this process works, because the unfortunate part of life and the reality, we all have to deal with grief. So I encourage you to find safe spaces to be able to release it and not try to hold it all in and not have the pressure of that grief inside of you all the time. I have talked to way too many people who have lost a loved one, lost a spouse, and all that grief that they're trying to keep inside is causing high blood pressure, different physical ailments, different things that are going on in their body because that grief needs to escape and the pressure is too much for the body. Find somebody in the faith that you practice, find a friend, but don't let it just keep slowly deteriorating you and holding it all in. It's not good for your body. When Jerri brought up about the thank you cards, I want to tell you, I totally forgot about that. I totally forgot about me, Tina, being Little Miss Logistic Organizer, wanting to check off a to-do list, and I want to get those thank you cards done. And I remember bringing them from Pennsylvania down to Virginia on one of my trips, and Jerri and my sister Yolanda were like, yeah, you're not doing that. So anybody that received a thank you card from me, most likely Jerri or Yolanda signed it. I talked about the note that I wanted to put in there, but I wasn't here for it. I did not want to do thank you cards. Thank you for attending my dead husband's funeral. No, because I wasn't thrilled about it. But I knew it's a social commitment that we have to do. So I said it to say there are things that we're required to do, we may not want to do, and you can get somebody to help you do it. At least it worked for me. One of the last things that I want to share with you is Jerri talking about the ability to flip it. When her grandson took the month of June, which had been a heartache for Jerri, and turned it around to flip it into something good, was life changing for her. It took her from dreading the month of June to going into a place of joy. So Jerri is taking that flip it, and she uses that in every aspect of her life. The ability to take a very painful situation and flip it around for something good, to me, serves us through grief, through work, through life, through relationships, through parenting, because as sure as we're alive, life will bring us ups and downs. And we are learning to flip it every day. You are learning to flip your grief by showing up and being part of the widowhood. This may be your first part of being here, or you may have seen every Saturday sit down. But what you're telling yourself is, I don't want to be stuck where I'm at. I need somebody else to help me along this journey. And I'm willing to lean into somebody, whether it's a conversation I'm having with someone that's been a widow or widower for 10, 20, 30 years, or someone that's just lost someone this year. Jerri just lost her sister last year. The grief is fresh. There are other of my friends that will be on this podcast that have lost loved ones just this year, but they are willing to share their journey because they want to help encourage you. They want you to know that you are not alone. And I encourage you to share with me your journey. Go to widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org. Put in that you want to be on the show. Put in that you want to share your journey. Whether you want to send in an audible tape or you like to schedule to be on the podcast. This is an opportunity for you to share your journey. Thank you for showing up and being with me here today. I am so sorry for your loved one that you've lost. This caused you to be a part of this hood, but I'm glad that you're here with us. Talk to you soon. Bye.